Question 1. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to managing user identities and access across a hybrid cloud environment. An organization is experiencing significant challenges with the timely onboarding and offboarding of a large contingent of contractors, the proliferation of cloud applications, and the integration with external partner systems. This has led to concerns about orphaned accounts, excessive permissions, and potential security vulnerabilities. Which of the following strategies best addresses these challenges while adhering to cloud security, best practices, and regulatory expectations for identity and access management? Option A. Focus solely on implementing role-based access control (RBAC) for all cloud resources, creating granular roles for every potential user task without a formal governance framework. Option B. Deploy attribute-based access control (ABAC) for critical applications, defining complex policies based on user attributes and resource characteristics, but without a unified identity lifecycle management system. Option C. Implement a centralized identity governance and administration (IGA) solution that integrates with existing cloud IAM services, automates user provisioning and deprovisioning, and enforces access policies across all cloud platforms and federated applications. Option D. Rely on manual processes for user account creation and deletion, with periodic, ad hoc reviews of access privileges conducted by individual system administrators. The correct answer is C. Implement a centralized identity governance and administration (IGA) solution that integrates with existing cloud IAM services, automates user provisioning and deprovisioning, and enforces access policies across all cloud platforms and federated applications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common but complex challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for granular access control with the operational overhead of managing a dynamic workforce and diverse application landscape. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that users have the minimum necessary privileges to perform their duties, principle of least privilege, while also enabling business agility and preventing unauthorized access, especially as the organization adopts new cloud services and integrates with external partners. The rapid onboarding and offboarding of contractors, coupled with the use of multiple cloud platforms, amplifies the risk of orphaned accounts, excessive permissions, and potential security breaches. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a robust identity governance and administration (IGA) solution that integrates with the existing cloud IAM infrastructure is the best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the challenges by providing a centralized platform for managing the entire identity lifecycle, from provisioning to deprovisioning, and enforcing access policies. IGA solutions automate many manual processes, reducing the risk of human error and ensuring compliance with access governance requirements. By leveraging federation and SSO, it streamlines user access to multiple cloud applications while maintaining a single source of truth for identity. This aligns with best practices for access control and user lifecycle management, minimizing the attack surface and enhancing security posture. Regulatory frameworks, such as those underpinning the CCSP exam, emphasize the importance of systematic identity management and access reviews to protect sensitive data and systems. Incorrect approach is analysis. Manually managing user accounts and permissions across disparate cloud platforms is professionally unacceptable due to the high risk of errors, inconsistencies, and delays in deprovisioning. This manual approach directly violates the principle of least privilege and significantly increases the likelihood of orphaned accounts and unauthorized access, creating a substantial compliance and security risk. It also fails to meet the operational demands of a dynamic workforce, leading to potential business disruptions. Relying solely on role-based access control (RBAC) without a comprehensive governance framework is insufficient. While RBAC is a foundational element, it can become unwieldy in complex environments with numerous roles and exceptions. Without a mechanism for regular access reviews, automated provisioning/deprovisioning, and policy enforcement, RBAC can lead to permission creep and a lack of visibility into who has access to what, thereby failing to meet access governance requirements and increasing the risk of insider threats. Implementing attribute-based access control (ABAC) without proper integration and governance, while powerful, can introduce complexity if not managed effectively. If ABAC policies are not clearly defined, consistently applied, and regularly audited, it can lead to unintended access restrictions or excessive permissions, undermining the security objectives. Furthermore, a standalone ABAC implementation without a broader identity-governed strategy misses critical aspects of user lifecycle management and access oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a holistic approach to cloud IAM. This involves understanding the organization's specific business needs, regulatory obligations, and threat landscape. The decision-making process should prioritize solutions that offer automation, centralized control, and continuous monitoring. When evaluating IAM strategies, consider the integration capabilities with existing systems, the ability to enforce the principle of least privilege, and the effectiveness of user lifecycle management. A phased implementation, starting with critical systems and gradually expanding, often proves more manageable and less disruptive. Regular audits and reviews are paramount to ensure the ongoing effectiveness of the IAM controls and to adapt to evolving threats and business requirements. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that a new serverless computing offering from a cloud service provider, CSP, could significantly reduce operational costs for a critical application. However, the organization operates under strict U.S. regulatory frameworks that mandate specific data residency and processing requirements for sensitive customer information. The proposed serverless architecture would involve functions that might process data across different availability zones within the CSP's U.S. regions. The security team needs to determine the best course of action to leverage this efficiency gain while ensuring full compliance. Option A. Immediately adopt the serverless offering to realize cost savings, assuming the CSP's standard U.S. region compliance is sufficient and relying on their shared responsibility model for data residency. Option B. Implement the serverless offering for non-sensitive data first and monitor its performance and compliance, deferring the assessment for sensitive data until a later phase. Option C. Conduct a thorough assessment of the serverless offering's security controls, data processing locations within U.S. regions, and its compatibility with existing data residency mandates and the organization's cloud security architecture before proceeding. Option D. Request the CSP to provide a custom serverless solution that guarantees data processing only within a single, specific availability zone to meet the strictest interpretation of data residency, even if it negates some of the efficiency benefits. The correct answer is A. Immediately adopt the serverless offering to realize cost savings, assuming the CSP's standard U.S. region compliance is sufficient and relying on their shared responsibility model for data residency. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the benefits of a new, potentially more efficient cloud service model with the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance and data protection. The efficiency study highlights a potential operational advantage, but without a thorough understanding of the underlying architectural and security implications, adopting the new service could inadvertently introduce significant risks. The core challenge lies in assessing the compatibility of the proposed serverless architecture with existing data residency requirements and the organization's overall cloud security strategy, which is governed by specific U.S. regulatory frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the serverless offering against the organization's established cloud security architecture and relevant U.S. regulations. This includes verifying the CSP's compliance with data residency mandates, e.g., ensuring data processed by the serverless functions remains within the U.S. if required by law or policy, evaluating the security controls inherent in the serverless model, e.g., function-level security, access controls, logging, and monitoring, and confirming that the proposed architecture aligns with the organization's defined cloud security principles and standards. This approach ensures that operational efficiency gains do not compromise legal obligations, data privacy, or the overall security posture, adhering to the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, as mandated by frameworks like NIST SB 800-53. Which are critical for U.S. federal agencies and organizations handling sensitive data. Incorrect approaches analysis. Adopting the serverless service solely based on the efficiency study without due diligence represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses the necessary risk assessment and compliance validation steps. This could lead to violations of data residency laws, such as those requiring data to be stored and processed within specific geographic boundaries, potentially resulting in substantial fines and reputational damage. Furthermore, it neglects the responsibility to implement appropriate security controls for serverless environments, which differ from traditional architectures. Failing to integrate the new service into the existing cloud security architecture means a lack of visibility, monitoring, and incident response capabilities, creating a security blind spot. This also violates the principle of due care and due diligence expected of security professionals. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud adoption. This involves 1. Understanding the business drivers and potential benefits, e.g. efficiency. 2. Identifying and assessing the associated risks, including security, compliance, and operational risks. 3. Evaluating proposed solutions against established security architecture, policies, and relevant regulatory requirements. 4. Implementing appropriate controls and monitoring mechanisms. 5. Continuously reviewing and adapting security measures as the cloud environment evolves. In this scenario, the decision-making process must prioritize compliance and security over immediate efficiency gains, ensuring that any new technology is integrated in a secure and compliant manner. Question 3. Regulatory review indicates a need to enhance the security posture of a cloud-based application processing sensitive data, specifically focusing on preventing lateral movement of threats within the virtual network. Given the U.S. regulatory framework, which approach to network security best aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth for cloud infrastructure. Option A. Rely exclusively on perimeter-based firewalls with extensive ingress and egress rule sets to control all network traffic. Option B. Establish broad network segmentation using only virtual private clouds, VPC, and subnets without further granular controls within these segments. Option C. Deploy a third-party network virtual appliance, NVA, as the sole solution for microsegmentation, independent of cloud-native security controls. Option D. Implement microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, tightly integrated with identity and access management, IAM, policies. The correct answer is D. Implement microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, tightly integrated with identity and access management, IAM policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for robust network segmentation with the operational demands of a dynamic, multi-tenant cloud environment. The professional must navigate the complexities of implementing microsegmentation effectively, while ensuring compliance with the U.S. regulatory framework, specifically focusing on the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Special Publication 800-53, which is a cornerstone for federal information systems and organizations that handle federal data. The challenge lies in the granular control required for microsegmentation, which can impact application performance and deployment speed if not carefully planned and executed, all while adhering to the principle of least privilege mandated by NIST. Correct approach analysis. Implementing microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, that are tightly integrated with identity and access management IAM policies represents best professional practice. This approach aligns directly with NIST SB 800-53 controls such as AC4, information flow enforcement, and SC7, boundary protection. By defining granular access policies at the workload level, it enforces the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only necessary communication paths are allowed. This significantly reduces the attack surface and limits the lateral movement of threats within the cloud environment. The integration with IAM ensures that access policies are dynamically managed and tied to authenticated identities, further strengthening security posture and auditability, which are critical for compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on perimeter-based firewalls for network security, even if configured with extensive rules, fails to address the internal threat landscape and the risks associated with compromised workloads. NIST SB 800-53 emphasizes defense in depth, and perimeter security alone is insufficient. This approach would be a regulatory failure under AC4 and SC7 by not enforcing information flow enforcement at a granular level within the network. Implementing broad network segmentation using only virtual private clouds, VPC, or subnets without further microsegmentation within those segments leaves significant lateral movement opportunities for attackers. While VPCs provide a foundational level of isolation, they do not offer the fine-grained control necessary to prevent a compromised workload in one segment from affecting others within the same VPC. This would be a deficiency in meeting the spirit of SC7 and AC4 by not adequately controlling information flow. Deploying a third-party network virtual appliance, NVA, as a sole solution for microsegmentation without proper integration with cloud-native controls and IAM can create management overhead and potential blind spots. While NVAs can offer advanced features, their effectiveness is dependent on correct configuration and ongoing maintenance, and they may not seamlessly integrate with cloud providers' dynamic resource provisioning, potentially leading to compliance gaps if not managed meticulously. This could lead to a failure in demonstrating continuous monitoring and control as expected under NIST SB 800-53, particularly for controls like C4, information system monitoring. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a defense-in-depth strategy that leverages cloud-native capabilities for granular control. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements, e.g., NIST SB 800-53 controls relevant to network security and access control. 2. Assessing the cloud environment architecture and identifying critical assets and data flows. 3. Prioritizing the implementation of microsegmentation at the workload level, using cloud-native tools like security groups and NACL, integrated with IAM. 4. Regularly reviewing and auditing network access policies to ensure they align with the principle of least privilege and evolving threat landscapes. 5. Considering third-party solutions only when they demonstrably enhance security and compliance beyond native capabilities, with a clear plan for integration and management. Question 4. Stakeholder feedback indicates that current cloud security policies are perceived as overly burdensome and hindering operational agility, leading to concerns about the effectiveness of security investments. As a cloud security architect, what is the most appropriate approach to address this feedback while ensuring robust security and compliance? Option A. Implement a blanket, overly restrictive security policy across all cloud services to ensure maximum protection, regardless of specific risk profiles or operational impact. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and prioritize cloud security risks, then develop and implement security policies and procedures that are directly mapped to these risks and aligned with relevant compliance frameworks such as NIST SB 800-53 and ISO 27001. Option C. Adopt a security by default approach, prioritizing the most stringent security controls for all cloud services to eliminate potential vulnerabilities. Option D. Focus exclusively on meeting the minimum requirements of the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, to address compliance concerns, as it is a widely recognized standard. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and prioritize cloud security risks, then develop and implement security policies and procedures that are directly mapped to these risks and aligned with relevant compliance frameworks such as NIST SB 800-53 and ISO 27001. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security governance, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational agility and cost-effectiveness demanded by business stakeholders. The feedback highlights a potential disconnect between perceived security overhead and actual risk reduction, requiring a data-driven and risk-informed approach to policy development and enforcement. The challenge lies in translating abstract security requirements into tangible, measurable outcomes that resonate with business objectives. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment to identify and prioritize cloud security risks, followed by the development of security policies and procedures that are directly mapped to these identified risks and aligned with relevant compliance frameworks like NIST SB 800-53 and ISO 27001. This ensures that security investments are proportionate to the risks and that controls are implemented where they provide the most value. It also demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance by adhering to established standards, which is crucial for maintaining trust and avoiding penalties. This approach fosters a culture of security by design and ensures that security is an enabler, not a blocker, to business operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a blanket, overly restrictive security policy without a thorough risk assessment fails to acknowledge the principle of proportionality in security. This approach can stifle innovation and operational efficiency, leading to stakeholder dissatisfaction and potential workarounds that introduce new, unmanaged risks. It also fails to demonstrate due diligence in understanding specific threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the organization's cloud environment, which is a core tenet of risk management frameworks. Adopting a security by default approach that prioritizes the most stringent security controls across all cloud services, regardless of their criticality or the data they handle, is inefficient and costly. This one-size-fits-all strategy ignores the nuanced risk profiles of different cloud assets and can lead to unnecessary complexity and expense without a corresponding increase in overall security posture. It also fails to align with the principle of least privilege and risk-based security, focusing solely on meeting the minimum requirements of a single compliance framework, such as PCI DSS, without considering broader security best practices or other relevant regulations, creates a compliance gap. This narrow focus can leave the organization vulnerable to threats not explicitly addressed by that specific framework, and it fails to provide a comprehensive security posture. It also misses the opportunity to leverage other frameworks like NIST or ISO 27001 for a more holistic and robust security program. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first understanding the specific feedback and the underlying concerns. This involves engaging with stakeholders to gather more detailed information. The next step is to initiate or review the organization's cloud risk assessment process, ensuring it is comprehensive and considers all relevant threats, vulnerabilities, and business impacts. Based on the risk assessment findings, security policies and procedures should be developed or updated, ensuring they are risk-informed, proportionate, and aligned with applicable regulatory frameworks, e.g., NIST SB 800-53, ISO 27001. Continuous monitoring and regular review of policies and controls are essential to adapt to evolving threats and business needs. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that a critical vulnerability has been identified in a core application scheduled for immediate deployment. The development team, citing project deadlines and minimal perceived risk of exploitation, is pushing for deployment without immediate remediation. The security team has assessed the vulnerability as high risk, with potential for significant data exfiltration and service disruption. What is the most appropriate course of action for the cloud security professional? Option A. Allow the deployment to proceed as scheduled, relying on the development team's assurance that a patch will be developed and deployed in a subsequent release. Option B. Escalate the vulnerability and its associated risks through the established incident response and change management processes, recommending a delay in deployment until a secure fix is implemented and validated. Option C. Immediately block the deployment and instruct the development team to halt all work until the vulnerability is fully remediated, regardless of project timelines. Option D. Implement a temporary technical workaround without formal approval, focusing solely on mitigating the immediate technical risk of the vulnerability. The correct answer is B. Escalate the vulnerability and its associated risks through the established incident response and change management processes, recommending a delay in deployment until a secure fix is implemented and validated. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical and professional challenge in cloud security. The security team has identified a critical vulnerability in a core application that is essential for business operations. The development team, under pressure to meet release deadlines, is resistant to halting deployment or implementing immediate fixes, citing potential business impact and the perceived low likelihood of exploitation. This creates a conflict between security imperatives and business objectives, requiring the security professional to balance risk, compliance, and operational continuity. The challenge lies in effectively communicating the severity of the risk, influencing stakeholders to prioritize security, and ensuring adherence to established secure development lifecycle (SDLC) practices without causing undue disruption. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves escalating the issue through established governance channels and invoking the incident response plan. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for cloud security. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of risk management and due diligence mandated by frameworks like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the Cloud Security Alliance, CSA, Cloud Controls Matrix, which emphasize proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of security risks. By following the established incident response procedures, the security team ensures that the vulnerability is addressed according to predefined protocols, involving relevant stakeholders, and documenting the decision-making process. This approach prioritizes the integrity and security of the application and the data it processes, which is a fundamental ethical responsibility for a cloud security professional. It also ensures that the organization's security posture is maintained in accordance with its risk appetite and compliance obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to accept the development team's assessment and allow the deployment to proceed with a promise of a future fix. This represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a disregard for established secure coding practices and SDLC requirements, potentially violating compliance mandates that require secure software development. Ethically, it exposes the organization and its users to undue risk, failing the duty of care expected of a security professional. This approach could lead to data breaches, reputational damage, and financial penalties, all of which are direct consequences of neglecting known vulnerabilities. Another incorrect approach is to unilaterally block the deployment without proper escalation or consultation. While security is paramount, a complete disregard for business impact and established change management processes can be professionally detrimental. This approach might violate organizational policies and governance structures, leading to a breakdown in trust between security and development teams. While it prioritizes security, it fails to demonstrate effective collaboration and communication, which are crucial for successful DevSecOps implementation. It also bypasses the established risk assessment and decision-making framework, potentially leading to suboptimal outcomes. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the technical mitigation, without considering the broader governance and compliance implications. For instance, implementing a temporary workaround without proper documentation or approval from the Security Governance Board could lead to compliance issues. It might also create technical debt or introduce new, unforeseen risks. This approach neglects the importance of a holistic security strategy that integrates technical controls with policy, procedures, and oversight, which is essential for maintaining a robust cloud security posture and meeting regulatory requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that involves 1. Thoroughly assessing the technical risk and potential impact of the vulnerability. 2. Consulting relevant organizational policies, procedures, and compliance requirements. 3. Engaging in open and transparent communication with all affected stakeholders, including development, operations, and business units. 4. Escalating the issue through established governance channels, presenting clear evidence and recommended actions. 5. Documenting all decisions, justifications, and actions taken. This process ensures that security decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both security best practices and business objectives, while upholding ethical responsibilities. Question 6. Implementation of a cloud security incident response plan requires an organization to effectively balance immediate containment and recovery with the critical need for digital forensic evidence preservation. Given a suspected compromise of a customer-facing web application hosted on a public cloud platform, what is the most appropriate initial action to take to ensure a thorough and compliant incident investigation? Option A. Immediately initiate automated scripts to isolate affected instances, terminate suspicious processes, and restore services from known good backups, while relying on cloud provider logs for post-incident analysis. Option B. Immediately notify all customers and regulatory bodies of a potential breach, providing preliminary details based on initial alerts, and then begin the process of investigating the incident. Option C. Prioritize the creation of forensic snapshots or images of affected cloud resources and collect relevant cloud provider logs, e.g., API call logs, network flow logs, before proceeding with any eradication or recovery actions. Option D. Focus on rebuilding the entire cloud environment from scratch using predefined infrastructure as code templates to ensure a clean state, without attempting to collect specific forensic data from the compromised systems. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate automated scripts to isolate affected instances, terminate suspicious processes, and restore services from known good backups, while relying on cloud provider logs for post-incident analysis. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common yet complex challenge in cloud security incident response, balancing the need for rapid containment with the preservation of critical forensic evidence in a dynamic, shared cloud environment. The inherent ephemeral nature of cloud resources, coupled with the shared responsibility model, complicates traditional forensic approaches. Organizations must navigate the technical complexities of cloud logging, access controls, and the potential for data loss or alteration during an incident, all while adhering to regulatory requirements for breach notification and evidence handling. The pressure to restore services quickly can conflict with the meticulous process required for thorough digital forensics, making the decision-making process highly challenging and requiring a deep understanding of both cloud architecture and incident response best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the establishment of a secure, isolated forensic environment before any eradication or recovery actions are taken. This aligns with best practices for digital forensics and incident response, ensuring that evidence is not inadvertently destroyed or altered. By creating a forensic snapshot or image of affected cloud resources and collecting relevant logs from cloud provider services, e.g., AWS CloudTrail, Azure Activity Logs, Google Cloud Audit Logs, the organization can conduct a thorough analysis without impacting the live environment. This methodical approach is crucial for accurate root cause analysis, understanding the attack vector, and meeting potential legal or regulatory obligations for evidence submission. It also supports effective post-incident activities, such as lessons learned and security control improvements. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately initiating automated eradication and recovery processes without first securing forensic evidence. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it can lead to the irreversible destruction of critical evidence needed for investigation, legal proceedings, or compliance audits. For example, if the incident involves a data breach, the compromised data itself, or logs detailing its exfiltration, could be lost. This jeopardizes the ability to comply with data breach notification laws, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on the jurisdiction, which often require detailed information about the nature of the breach and the data affected. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of diligence in understanding the full scope and impact of the incident. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on restoring services by rebuilding the environment from backups without any forensic investigation. While rapid recovery is important, this approach bypasses the crucial step of understanding how the incident occurred. This can lead to a repeat incident if the underlying vulnerability or attack vector is not identified and remediated. From a regulatory perspective, failing to investigate thoroughly can hinder compliance with security standards that mandate incident analysis and reporting. Ethically, it represents a reactive rather than proactive security posture, potentially leaving the organization and its stakeholders vulnerable to future attacks. A third incorrect approach is to rely exclusively on the cloud provider's incident response capabilities without conducting an independent investigation. While cloud providers offer security services, the customer is ultimately responsible for the security of their data and applications within the cloud. Over-reliance on the provider can lead to gaps in understanding the specific impact on the customer's environment and may not satisfy the customer's own regulatory or contractual obligations for incident investigation and reporting. This can result in a failure to meet due diligence requirements and potentially violate service-level agreements or compliance mandates. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased incident response plan that explicitly incorporates digital forensics. The decision-making process should involve 1. Activating the incident response team and assessing the incident's severity. 2. Prioritizing evidence preservation, including capturing volatile data and creating forensic images of affected cloud resources. 3. Isolating affected systems to prevent further damage or spread. 4. Conducting a thorough forensic analysis to determine the root cause, scope, and impact. 5. Implementing containment, eradication, and recovery measures based on forensic findings. 6. Documenting all actions and findings meticulously. 7. Communicating appropriately with stakeholders and regulatory bodies as required. This structured approach ensures that both immediate operational needs and long-term investigative and compliance requirements are met. Question 7. The performance metrics show a significant upward trend in user engagement, but the underlying data includes personally identifiable information, PI, that was collected for service delivery. The CISO is tasked with analyzing this data to identify key drivers of engagement for strategic planning, but has not yet confirmed explicit consent for this secondary use of the PII, nor has the data been fully anonymized. The legal department is currently reviewing the organization's data processing agreements and consent mechanisms in light of GDPR. What is the most appropriate course of action for the CISO? Option A. Use the raw performance metrics for analysis, but implement robust data masking techniques to obscure sensitive fields before presenting findings. Option B. Proceed with the analysis using the raw performance metrics, assuming that the collection of PII for service delivery implicitly covers its use for internal performance analysis. Option C. Engage a third-party data anonymization service to process the PII and provide anonymized data for analysis, without waiting for legal confirmation. Option D. Halt all analysis of the performance metrics until the legal department confirms that explicit consent has been obtained for this specific use of the PII, or that the data has been rendered truly anonymous. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the analysis using the raw performance metrics, assuming that the collection of PII for service delivery implicitly covers its use for internal performance analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in cloud data security, specifically concerning data privacy and compliance with regulations like GDPR. The challenge lies in balancing the business need for data analysis with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal data. The CISO must make a decision that upholds regulatory requirements and user trust, even if it impacts immediate business objectives. The pressure to deliver insights quickly can conflict with the meticulous processes required for data anonymization and consent management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes compliance with data privacy regulations, such as GDPR, which mandates explicit consent for processing personal data for secondary purposes like analytics, or the use of robust anonymization techniques. By seeking legal counsel and ensuring that the data used for performance metric analysis is either fully anonymized or has obtained appropriate consent, the CISO upholds the organization's legal obligations and ethical commitment to data privacy. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible data handling, fostering trust with users and avoiding significant legal and reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. Using the raw performance metrics directly for analysis without verifying consent or anonymization fails to comply with GDPR. This constitutes a direct violation of data privacy principles, specifically the lawful basis for processing personal data. It exposes the organization to severe penalties, including substantial fines and reputational damage. Proceeding with analysis based on an assumption of implied consent is a risky and often legally unsound practice under GDPR. Implied consent is rarely sufficient for processing personal data for new purposes, especially when it involves detailed performance metrics that could potentially identify individuals. This approach disregards the explicit requirements for consent and risks regulatory noncompliance. Delaying the analysis indefinitely until a perfect, but potentially unattainable, anonymization solution is found, while seemingly cautious, can be professionally detrimental. It hinders business operations and innovation without a clear justification if a compliant, albeit less perfect, anonymization or consent mechanism is feasible. This approach fails to strike a balance between compliance and operational needs. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach that integrates legal and compliance considerations from the outset. When faced with data analysis requirements, the first step should be to understand the nature of the data, its sensitivity, and the applicable regulatory framework. Consulting with legal and privacy teams is paramount to determine the lawful basis for processing and the appropriate security controls. If personal data is involved, robust anonymization techniques or explicit consent mechanisms must be implemented and validated before any analysis proceeds. This proactive and collaborative approach ensures that business objectives are met responsibly and ethically, minimizing legal and reputational risks. Question 8. The control framework reveals that the organization's cloud-based disaster recovery solution has not undergone a full, end-to-end failover test in over 2 years, despite a documented requirement for annual testing to meet compliance obligations. Management is now pushing for significant cost reductions in the IT budget, suggesting that the frequency of these comprehensive tests be reduced to once every 3 years to save on resources and personnel time. As the cloud security professional responsible for BCDR, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Agree to the reduced testing frequency, documenting the decision and the rationale provided by management, and focus on less resource-intensive, partial testing methods. Option B. Advocate for maintaining the annual testing schedule, providing a detailed risk assessment that quantifies the potential business impact of an untested recovery plan, and highlighting the specific regulatory and compliance failures that would result from reduced testing. Option C. Escalate the issue to senior leadership and the audit committee, presenting the risks and compliance gaps, and requesting a formal decision on the acceptable level of risk and the necessary budget allocation for BCDR testing. Option D. Propose a phased approach to testing, focusing on individual components of the disaster recovery solution rather than full end-to-end tests, to reduce immediate costs while still providing some level of assurance. The correct answer is B. Advocate for maintaining the annual testing schedule, providing a detailed risk assessment that quantifies the potential business impact of an untested recovery plan, and highlighting the specific regulatory and compliance failures that would result from reduced testing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical and professional challenge in cloud security, particularly within the context of business continuity and disaster recovery, BCDR. The core dilemma lies in balancing the immediate cost-saving pressures from management with the long-term security and resilience requirements mandated by regulatory frameworks and best practices. The pressure to reduce expenses by cutting corners on disaster recovery testing, despite evidence of potential vulnerabilities, creates a conflict between fiduciary duty to the organization and the professional responsibility to ensure adequate security and availability. This requires a nuanced understanding of risk, compliance, and the potential consequences of inadequate BCDR. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves advocating for continued robust disaster recovery testing, even if it incurs additional costs. This aligns directly with CCSP Domain 4, Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Planning. Regulatory frameworks, such as those that might be referenced in a U.S. context, e.g. NIST SB 800-34, Contingency Planning Guide for Federal Information Systems, or industry-specific regulations like HIPAA for healthcare, mandate that organizations have effective BCDR plans that are regularly tested and validated. The professional ethical obligation, as often embodied in codes of conduct for IT professionals, is to act in the best interest of the organization, which includes protecting its operations and data from disruption. Demonstrating the value of testing through risk assessments and potential impact analyses, and clearly communicating the residual risks of not testing, is crucial for informed decision-making. This approach upholds the principle of due diligence and ensures compliance with potential legal and regulatory obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to agree to reduce disaster recovery testing frequency to meet budget constraints without a thorough risk assessment. This fails to acknowledge the inherent risks associated with untested BCDR plans. Regulatory frameworks often require testing at a frequency that ensures the plan remains effective, and reducing this without justification can lead to non-compliance and significant financial and reputational damage in the event of a disaster. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due care and diligence. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor-provided DRAS assurances without independent validation. While DRAS providers offer robust solutions, the responsibility for ensuring the effectiveness of the BCDR plan ultimately rests with the customer organization. Regulatory requirements typically demand that the organization itself validates its recovery capabilities. Over-reliance on a third party without independent testing can lead to a false sense of security and significant gaps in actual recovery capabilities, violating the principle of accountability. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize other security initiatives over BCDR testing due to perceived immediate threats. While other security concerns are valid, BCDR is a fundamental pillar of resilience. Neglecting BCDR testing, even in favor of other security measures, leaves the organization vulnerable to catastrophic failures that could render other security investments moot. This demonstrates a failure to understand the holistic nature of cloud security and the critical importance of business continuity. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first understanding the specific regulatory and contractual obligations related to BCDR. This involves consulting relevant standards, e.g., NIST, ISO 27001, industry best practices, and any service-level agreements, SLAs, with cloud providers or DRaaS vendors. The next step is to conduct a thorough business impact analysis, BIA, and risk assessment to quantify the potential impact of a disaster and the likelihood of BCDR plan failure if testing is reduced. This data-driven approach provides objective evidence to support the need for adequate testing. Communication is key. Present the findings and recommendations to management in clear, business-oriented terms, highlighting the risks and potential costs of inaction versus the investment in testing. If management still insists on reducing testing, document the concerns and recommendations thoroughly and seek to establish clear acceptance of residual risk. Question 9. Process analysis reveals that a cloud security team is tasked with developing a comprehensive security awareness and training program for a rapidly growing organization with diverse user roles, including cloud administrators, developers, executive leadership, and general end users. The team is considering several approaches to deliver this training effectively and ensure a strong security culture across the organization. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of effective cloud security awareness and training? Option A. Develop a tiered training program that tailors content and delivery methods to specific user roles, focusing on the unique cloud security risks and responsibilities pertinent to each group, while also incorporating general security best practices for all employees. Option B. Prioritize in-depth technical security training exclusively for cloud administrators and developers, assuming that other user groups will not significantly impact the organization's cloud security posture. Option C. Focus security awareness training efforts primarily on responding to security incidents, delivering training only after a breach or significant security event has occurred to address immediate lessons learned. Option D. Implement a single, comprehensive training module covering all aspects of cloud security, delivered to every employee regardless of their role or technical expertise, to ensure a baseline understanding for everyone. The correct answer is A. Develop a tiered training program that tailors content and delivery methods to specific user roles, focusing on the unique cloud security risks and responsibilities pertinent to each group, while also incorporating general security best practices for all employees. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, ensuring that a diverse workforce, from technical administrators to non-technical executives, receives relevant and effective security awareness training. The difficulty lies in tailoring content to different roles and responsibilities, while maintaining a consistent baseline of security understanding across the organization. A one-size-fits-all approach is unlikely to be effective, leading to either overwhelming technical users with basic concepts or leaving non-technical users with insufficient understanding of critical cloud security risks. The CCSP framework emphasizes the importance of a comprehensive security awareness program that addresses specific threats and user roles. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a tiered and role-based training strategy. This aligns with CCSP Domain 1, which covers governance, risk, and compliance, including the establishment of security awareness and training programs. By segmenting training based on user roles, e.g., cloud administrators, developers, executives, general users, the program can deliver targeted content that addresses the specific cloud security risks and responsibilities relevant to each group. For instance, cloud administrators require in-depth training on secure configuration and access management, while executives need to understand the business impact of cloud security breaches and their role in fostering a security-conscious culture. This approach ensures that training is practical, engaging, and maximizes knowledge retention, thereby improving the overall security posture of the cloud environment. It also supports the principle of least privilege and role-based access control by ensuring users are trained on the security implications of their specific access and duties. Incorrect approaches analysis. A generic, company-wide training program that covers all cloud security topics at a superficial level fails to address the specific needs and risks associated with different user roles. This can lead to information overload for some and insufficient understanding for others, rendering the training ineffective and potentially creating security gaps. Ethically, it fails to adequately equip all employees with the knowledge necessary to protect sensitive data and systems relevant to their roles, focusing solely on technical training for cloud administrators and developers, while neglecting executive and general user awareness, creates a significant blind spot. Executives need to understand the strategic implications of cloud security, including compliance and reputational risk, make informed decisions, and allocate resources effectively. General users are often the first line of defense against social engineering attacks, and their lack of awareness can be a major vulnerability. This approach violates the principle of shared responsibility in cloud security. Implementing training only when a security incident occurs is a reactive and insufficient strategy. CCSP emphasizes proactive security measures, and a robust security awareness program is a cornerstone of this. Waiting for an incident to train users is a failure of due diligence and significantly increases the risk of repeat incidents and greater damage. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to continuous security improvement and risk mitigation. Professional reasoning. Professionally, when developing a cloud security awareness and training program, a risk-based and role-centric approach is paramount. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying key user groups and their interaction with cloud services. 2. Assessing the specific cloud security risks and threats relevant to each group. 3. Defining learning objectives tailored to the responsibilities and knowledge level of each group. 4. Developing or curating training content that is engaging, practical, and directly applicable to their roles. 5. Establishing metrics to measure the effectiveness of the training and identify areas for improvement. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating the program to address evolving threats in cloud technologies. This systematic approach ensures that the training program is not only compliant with best practices, but also demonstrably effective in enhancing the organization's security posture. Question 10. Investigation of a financial services firm's new cloud-native application, built using a microservices architecture, reveals that the development team has implemented security controls primarily focused on securing the individual container images and the ingress traffic to the application's API gateway. Inter-service communication between microservices is largely unencrypted and relies on the assumption that services within the same virtual private cloud, VPC, are inherently trusted. The firm operates under strict financial regulations requiring robust data protection and access control. Which architectural approach best addresses the security posture of this microservices deployment while adhering to regulatory mandates? Option A. Establish implicit trust between microservices deployed within the same VPC, relying on network segmentation alone to prevent unauthorized access between services. Option B. Focus security efforts on hardening the container images and ensuring the security of the container orchestration platform, assuming that securing the underlying infrastructure is sufficient for microservices. Option C. Enhance the perimeter security of the VPC by deploying additional firewalls and intrusion detection systems to monitor traffic entering and leaving the cloud environment. Option D. Implement a zero-trust architecture, ZTA, by enforcing strict identity verification and granular access controls for all inter-service communications, API calls, and data access, coupled with continuous monitoring. The correct answer is D. Implement a zero-trust architecture, ZTA, by enforcing strict identity verification and granular access controls for all inter-service communications, API calls, and data access, coupled with continuous monitoring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security architecture, balancing the need for rapid development and deployment with robust security controls, particularly when adopting a microservices architecture. The challenge lies in ensuring that the security design for individual microservices and their interactions aligns with overarching organizational security policies and regulatory requirements without becoming a bottleneck. The distributed nature of microservices, the use of APIs for inter-service communication, and the dynamic scaling of these services introduce complexities in maintaining consistent security posture and visibility. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a zero-trust architecture, ZTA, is the best professional practice in this scenario. ZTA operates on the principle of never trust, always verify, requiring strict identity verification for every person and device trying to access resources on a private network, regardless of whether they are inside or outside the network perimeter. For microservices, this translates to enforcing granular access controls at the API gateway and between services, employing strong authentication and authorization mechanisms, and continuously monitoring traffic for anomalies. This approach directly addresses the inherent trust issues in distributed systems and aligns with modern cloud security best practices, aiming to minimize the attack surface and limit the blast radius of any potential breach. It supports regulatory compliance by ensuring that access to sensitive data and functions is strictly controlled and auditable. Correct approach is analysis. Adopting a perimeter-based security model for the microservices is a regulatory and ethical failure. This approach assumes that everything inside the network perimeter is trusted, which is fundamentally incompatible with a microservices architecture where services communicate dynamically and often externally. This creates significant security gaps, as a compromise of one service could easily lead to the compromise of others. It fails to meet the principle of least privilege and robust access control mandated by many security frameworks and regulations, increasing the risk of unauthorized access and data exfiltration. Implementing security solely at the container orchestration layer without considering inter-service communication is another failure. While container orchestration provides some security benefits, it does not inherently secure the communication channels between microservices or enforce fine-grained access control for API calls. This leaves the application logic and data vulnerable to attacks that exploit insecure API interactions. It neglects the principle of defense in depth and fails to provide the necessary granular security controls required for a distributed system, potentially violating data protection regulations by not adequately securing data in transit. Relying on implicit trust between microservices based on their deployment within the same cloud environment is a critical security and ethical lapse. This assumption of trust is a direct violation of zero-trust principles and creates a false sense of security. If one microservice is compromised, it can easily pivot to other services within the same environment, leading to widespread compromise. This approach fails to implement robust authentication and authorization for service-to-service communication, increasing the risk of unauthorized data access and manipulation, which is a direct contravention of data integrity and confidentiality requirements in most regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach cloud security architecture design by first understanding the threat landscape and the specific requirements of the application and its underlying architecture. For microservices, the distributed and dynamic nature necessitates a security model that moves beyond traditional perimeter-based defenses. Evaluating security patterns like zero trust, implementing robust identity and access management, and ensuring secure communication channels are paramount. Decision-making should be guided by a risk-based approach, prioritizing controls that mitigate the most significant threats and align with regulatory obligations, ensuring continuous monitoring and adaptation to evolving threats. Question 11. What factors determine the selection of appropriate cryptographic algorithms for protecting sensitive data within a cloud environment, considering both security efficacy and regulatory compliance? Option A. The algorithm's computational speed and the availability of the algorithm in the chosen cloud provider's service offerings. Option B. The algorithm's historical usage and its perceived complexity for attackers to break. Option C. The specific security requirements of the data, industry best practices for cloud security, and applicable regulatory mandates. Option D. The algorithm's resistance to known side-channel attacks and its suitability for encrypting small amounts of data. Correct answer is C. The specific security requirements of the data, industry best practices for cloud security, and applicable regulatory mandates. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, selecting the appropriate cryptographic algorithm for data protection in a regulated environment. The professional must balance security requirements, performance considerations, and compliance mandates. The challenge lies in understanding the nuances of different cryptographic algorithms and their suitability for specific use cases, particularly when dealing with sensitive data, and adhering to specific regulatory frameworks like those relevant to the CCSP exam. The need to protect data confidentiality and integrity while ensuring efficient processing without compromising regulatory compliance makes this a complex decision. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves selecting an algorithm that meets the specific security requirements of the data being protected, aligns with industry best practices for cloud environments, and complies with relevant regulatory mandates. For symmetric encryption of large datasets, AES 256 is a strong choice due to its proven security, widespread adoption, and performance efficiency. For asymmetric encryption or digital signatures, RSA with a sufficient key length e.g. 3072 bits or higher, or ECC with an equivalent security level is appropriate. The choice also depends on the specific threat model and the sensitivity of the data. Compliance with standards like NIST SB 800-53 or ISO 27001, which often dictate acceptable cryptographic algorithms and key lengths, is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. Choosing an algorithm solely based on its perceived strength without considering the specific use case or regulatory requirements is a significant failure. For instance, using a computationally intensive algorithm like RSA for encrypting every single data record in a high-volume transaction system would lead to unacceptable performance degradation and operational issues, even if RSA is considered strong for other purposes. Relying on outdated or deprecated algorithms, e.g. DES MD5, is a critical security and regulatory failure, as these are known to be vulnerable to attacks. Furthermore, selecting an algorithm without understanding its key management implications or its compatibility with existing cloud infrastructure can lead to implementation errors and security gaps. Ignoring regulatory guidance on acceptable cryptographic standards, e.g., using algorithms not recommended by NIST or other relevant bodies, constitutes a direct compliance violation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a thorough understanding of the data's sensitivity, the threat landscape, and the applicable regulatory requirements. They should consult established cryptographic standards and guidelines, e.g., NIST and NISA, to identify algorithms that provide adequate security for the intended purpose. Performance implications and interoperability with cloud services must also be evaluated. A layered security approach, combining appropriate encryption algorithms with robust key management practices, is essential. Regular review and updates of cryptographic strategies are necessary to adapt to evolving threats and new algorithmic developments, including the potential impact of quantum computing. Question 12. When evaluating the implementation of a new virtual network design for a critical cloud-based application, which approach best ensures the security posture of the network before and after deployment? Option A. Select network components based primarily on their cost-effectiveness, assuming that standard vendor security features will provide adequate protection. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that analyzes potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of security incidents on the proposed virtual network design, informing the selection and configuration of appropriate security controls. Option C. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the virtual network to enable rapid access to the new application, deferring detailed security reviews until after the service is operational. Option D. Implement a set of generic network security best practices without a specific assessment of the unique risks associated with the new virtual network architecture. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that analyzes potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of security incidents on the proposed virtual network design, informing the selection and configuration of appropriate security controls. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for network connectivity with the long-term security posture of a cloud environment. The rapid deployment of new services often introduces unforeseen vulnerabilities. A failure to adequately assess network security risks before implementation can lead to significant data breaches, regulatory noncompliance, and reputational damage. The dynamic nature of cloud environments, coupled with the complexity of virtual network design and segmentation, necessitates a proactive and thorough risk assessment process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically addresses the proposed virtual network design and its implications for network segmentation and isolation. This aligns with CCSP Domain 4, which emphasizes secure cloud network architecture. A risk assessment allows for the identification of potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the likelihood and impact of security incidents. By understanding these risks, appropriate security controls, such as granular firewall rules, intrusion detection/prevention systems, IPS, and network traffic encryption, can be designed and implemented to mitigate them effectively. This proactive approach ensures that security is built into the network design from the outset, rather than being an afterthought, and directly supports compliance with general cloud security, best practices, and potentially specific regulatory requirements for data protection and integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing immediate functionality over security assessment creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses critical risk identification and mitigation steps, directly violating the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to secure cloud architecture. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the potential harm to data subjects and the organization's stakeholders. Focusing solely on the cost-effectiveness of network components without a corresponding security risk evaluation is also a failure. While cost is a consideration, it should not supersede the imperative to protect sensitive data and maintain system integrity. This approach can lead to the selection of inadequate security controls, increasing the likelihood of breaches and subsequent regulatory penalties. It also represents an ethical lapse by potentially exposing the organization and its users to undue risk for financial gain. Implementing network security controls based on generic industry best practices without a specific risk assessment for the cloud environment is insufficient. While industry best practices are valuable, they may not adequately address the unique threat landscape and architectural nuances of a specific cloud deployment. This can result in gaps in security coverage, leaving the organization vulnerable to targeted attacks. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in protecting sensitive information, which can have ethical and regulatory repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud network security. This involves 1. Identifying assets and their criticality. 2. Identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the cloud environment and the specific services being deployed. 3. Analyzing the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 4. Determining appropriate security controls to mitigate these risks to an acceptable level. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment as the cloud environment evolves. This systematic process ensures that security investments are prioritized effectively and that the organization's security posture is aligned with its business objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that the current cloud object storage configuration is experiencing performance bottlenecks and high operational costs. To address this, a proposed solution involves simplifying access control mechanisms and reducing the frequency of data encryption checks to improve throughput. Which of the following approaches best balances security, compliance, and efficiency for cloud storage? Option A. Apply a blanket encryption policy to all data stored in object storage, regardless of sensitivity, and disable access logging to reduce overhead. Option B. Implement automated data classification and granular access controls, ensuring robust encryption for data at rest and in transit based on classification levels, and maintain comprehensive access logging. Option C. Reduce the frequency of encryption checks for data at rest and in transit and implement broad, permissive access rules to maximize performance. Option D. Rely on the cloud provider's default security configurations and disable granular access controls to simplify management and improve performance. The correct answer is B. Implement automated data classification and granular access controls, ensuring robust encryption for data at rest and in transit based on classification levels, and maintain comprehensive access logging. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing operational efficiency with robust data protection, particularly in the context of sensitive data stored in cloud object storage. The pressure to optimize costs and performance can sometimes lead to compromises in security controls, creating a professional dilemma. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method to secure data without unduly hindering legitimate access or increasing operational overhead beyond acceptable limits. The CCSP professional must navigate the complexities of data lifecycle management, access control, and regulatory compliance within the cloud environment. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a comprehensive data lifecycle management policy that includes automated data classification and granular access controls, coupled with robust encryption for data at rest and in transit, represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses multiple CCSP domains, including cloud data security and cloud platform and infrastructure security. Specifically, it aligns with the principle of least privilege for access control, ensuring that only authorized entities can access specific data segments. Encryption at rest, e.g., using AES 256 and in transit, e.g., TLS 1, 2 or higher, is a fundamental requirement for protecting data confidentiality and integrity, as mandated by various data protection regulations. Automated data classification ensures that sensitive data is identified and protected according to its risk level, facilitating compliance with regulations like GDPR or CCPA, depending on the specified jurisdiction for the exam, which for CCSP is generally US-centric unless otherwise stated, implying adherence to frameworks like NIST and relevant US laws. This layered security strategy provides defense in depth, minimizing the attack surface and the impact of potential breaches. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on the cloud provider's default security settings without independent verification and configuration is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Cloud providers offer a shared responsibility model. The customer is responsible for configuring and managing security within the cloud. Default settings may not meet specific organizational compliance requirements or the organization's risk tolerance, leading to potential data breaches and non-compliance with data protection laws. Implementing a broad blanket encryption policy for all data, regardless of sensitivity, can be operationally inefficient and may not be the most cost-effective solution. While encryption is crucial, applying it indiscriminately can lead to performance degradation and increased management overhead without a commensurate increase in security for less sensitive data. This approach fails to optimize resource utilization and can be seen as a less mature security posture than a risk-based, data classification-driven approach. Disabling access logging for cloud storage to improve performance is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. Access logs are essential for auditing, incident response, and forensic investigations. Without them, it becomes impossible to detect unauthorized access, track data exfiltration, or prove compliance with data protection mandates. This directly violates principles of accountability and transparency required by most data privacy regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud storage security. This involves understanding the sensitivity of the data being stored, the applicable regulatory requirements, and the threat landscape. The decision-making process should prioritize 1. Data classification, categorize data based on its sensitivity and regulatory requirements. 2. Access control, implement the principle of least privilege, granting access only to those who need it for legitimate business purposes. 3. Encryption, apply appropriate encryption mechanisms for data at rest and in transit based on data classification. 4. Monitoring and logging, ensure comprehensive logging of access and administrative activities and regularly review these logs. 5. Policy enforcement. Develop and enforce clear security policies that align with regulatory mandates and organizational risk appetite. 6. Regular audits and reviews. Periodically audit security configurations and policies to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 14. The evaluation methodology shows a US-based cloud service provider experiencing a data breach that has exposed the personal information of California residents. The provider's incident response team is debating the immediate next steps. Which of the following actions best aligns with the legal and regulatory framework governing data privacy and breach notification in California? Option A. Rely solely on the cloud service provider's existing general data breach response plan, assuming it adequately covers all CCPA/CPRA-specific notification and reporting requirements without further verification. Option B. Delay notification to affected individuals until a complete root cause analysis of the breach is finalized, even if this process extends beyond the legally mandated notification period. Option C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive investigation to determine the scope and impact of the breach, notify affected California residents and the California Attorney General within the CCPA/CPRA stipulated timeframe, and implement enhanced security measures. Option D. Notify only those affected individuals whose data is deemed to have been significantly compromised, without a clear definition of significant, and without notifying the California Attorney General. Correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a comprehensive investigation to determine the scope and impact of the breach, notify affected California residents and the California Attorney General within the CCPA/CPRA stipulated timeframe, and implement enhanced security measures. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a U.S.-based cloud service provider, CSP, is experiencing a data breach affecting personal information of individuals residing in California. This scenario is professionally challenging due to the intersecting legal and regulatory landscapes governing data privacy and breach notification in the United States, specifically California. The CSP must navigate the requirements of the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, as amended by the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA, which mandates specific actions and timelines for data breach notifications. The complexity arises from the need to accurately identify affected individuals, determine the scope of the breach, and communicate effectively with both affected individuals and the California Attorney General within the legally prescribed timeframe, all while managing reputational damage and potential legal liabilities. The correct approach, which involves immediately initiating a comprehensive investigation to determine the scope and impact of the breach, notifying affected California residents and the California Attorney General within the CCPA/CPRA stipulated timeframe, and implementing enhanced security measures represents best professional practice. This aligns directly with the legal obligations under CCPA/CPRA. The CCPA/CPRA mandates that businesses provide specific information to consumers and the Attorney General in the event of a breach of personal information. Prompt and accurate notification is crucial to avoid penalties, maintain consumer trust, and fulfill ethical responsibilities. The emphasis on investigation ensures that the notification is accurate and comprehensive, and the focus on enhanced security demonstrates a commitment to preventing future incidents, which is a core tenet of data protection best practices. An incorrect approach that involves delaying notification until a full root cause analysis is complete, even if it exceeds the statutory deadline, is a significant regulatory failure. The CCPA/CPRA has specific timelines for notification, and exceeding these can lead to substantial fines and legal action. This approach prioritizes internal processes over legal mandates and consumer rights. Another incorrect approach, which is to only notify affected individuals if the breach is deemed significant, without a clear understanding of the CCPA/CPRA definition of significant or the specific requirements for notification, is also a regulatory failure. The CCPA/CPRA notification requirements are triggered by a breach of personal information, and the determination of significance is often interpreted broadly by regulators. Furthermore, failing to notify the California Attorney General as required by law is a direct violation of the statute. A third incorrect approach, which is to assume that the CSP's existing General Data Breach Response Plan is sufficient without verifying its compliance with CCPA/CPRA specific requirements, is an ethical and regulatory oversight. Generic plans may not adequately address the specific notification content, timing, and reporting obligations mandated by California law, leading to noncompliance. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a proactive and compliance-driven approach. Professionals should first understand the specific legal and regulatory obligations applicable to the data and the affected individual's jurisdictions. This involves consulting legal counsel specializing in data privacy and breach notification laws. A robust incident response plan that is regularly reviewed and updated to reflect current regulations is essential. During a breach, the priority is to contain the incident, assess its impact accurately, and then execute the notification process in strict adherence to legal timelines and content requirements. Continuous monitoring and improvement of security controls are also critical to prevent recurrence. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a cloud-hosted application just days before its scheduled production release. The development team has confirmed the vulnerability allows for unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. Product management is strongly advocating for the release to meet market demands and contractual obligations, suggesting a post-release patch. The security team is concerned about the immediate exposure of customer data and potential regulatory noncompliance. What is the most appropriate course of action for the security professional? Option A. Advocate for delaying the release until the critical vulnerability is fully remediated and retested, providing a clear risk assessment to stakeholders. Option B. Proceed with the release as scheduled, documenting the vulnerability and planning for an immediate post-release patch, prioritizing market timelines. Option C. Escalate the decision to a junior security analyst to assess the impact and make a recommendation, given the tight deadline. Option D. Release the application and instruct the development team to address the vulnerability as a lower priority task in the next development cycle. The correct answer is A. Advocate for delaying the release until the critical vulnerability is fully remediated and retested, providing a clear risk assessment to stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in cloud application development, balancing the urgency of a feature release with the discovery of a significant security vulnerability. The challenge lies in the conflicting pressures from product management, speed to market, and the security team's responsibility to protect the application and its users from potential harm. The ethical imperative is to prioritize security over immediate business gains when a critical flaw is identified, especially given the potential for data breaches and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the remediation of the identified vulnerability before the release. This aligns with the principles of secure software development lifecycle, SDLC, and DevSecOps, which advocate for integrating security throughout the development process, not as an afterthought. From a regulatory and compliance perspective, particularly within frameworks like those governing data protection e.g. GDPR if applicable, though CCSP is jurisdiction agnostic in its core principles, it emphasizes adherence to relevant laws. Releasing a product with a known critical vulnerability could lead to non-compliance, fines, and legal liabilities. Ethically, it represents a commitment to due diligence and responsible product stewardship, safeguarding customer data and trust. This approach ensures that security is a foundational element, not a negotiable feature. Incorrect approaches analysis. Releasing the application with a promise to patch later fails to uphold the principle of security by design. It exposes users and the organization to immediate risk. Ethically, this is a breach of trust, as users are unknowingly exposed to potential exploitation. From a regulatory standpoint, depending on the nature of the vulnerability and the data handled, this could constitute a violation of data protection laws, leading to significant penalties and reputational damage. Ignoring the vulnerability and proceeding with the release due to time constraints is a severe ethical and professional failing. It demonstrates a disregard for user safety and organizational security. This approach directly contravenes the core tenets of secure coding practices and application security testing, rendering the security testing efforts moot. It also creates a significant compliance risk, as organizations are expected to take reasonable steps to protect data and systems. Delegating the decision to a less experienced team member without proper oversight abdicates responsibility. While collaboration is important, the ultimate accountability for a security decision of this magnitude rests with senior leadership and security professionals. This approach risks a rushed or inadequate assessment of the vulnerability and its implications, potentially leading to the same negative outcomes as releasing with a known flaw. It also fails to foster a culture of security accountability. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Clearly identifying and quantifying the risk associated with the vulnerability. 2. Evaluating the potential impact on users, the organization, and regulatory compliance. 3. Assessing the feasibility and timeline for remediation. 4. Communicating the risks and recommended actions clearly to all stakeholders, including product management and executive leadership. The decision should be driven by the severity of the risk and the ethical obligation to protect. In cases of critical vulnerabilities, the default should be to delay release until remediation is complete, supported by clear communication and justification. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that the cloud security operations team is overwhelmed by the sheer volume of security alerts generated by their security information and event management (SIEM) system, leading to delays in threat investigation and response. To address this, the team is considering several strategies. Which of the following strategies best aligns with efficient and effective cloud security operations while adhering to regulatory compliance principles? Option A. Disable specific categories of alerts that are frequently flagged as noisy without a formal risk assessment. Option B. Manually investigate every single alert generated by the SIEM, regardless of its perceived severity, to ensure no event is missed. Option C. Increase the SIEM alert thresholds to filter out lower priority events and reduce the overall alert volume. Option D. Implement a security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platform to automate alert triage, enrichment, and initial incident response actions. The correct answer is D. Implement a security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platform to automate alert triage, enrichment, and initial incident response actions. Explanation: the efficiency study reveals that the cloud security operations team is struggling to keep pace with the increasing volume of security alerts generated by their security information and event management (SIEM) system. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts the organization's ability to detect and respond to threats in a timely manner, potentially leading to significant security breaches and regulatory noncompliance. The pressure to manage a high alert volume with limited resources necessitates a strategic approach that balances operational efficiency with robust security. The correct approach, implementing a security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platform to automate repetitive tasks and streamline incident response workflows, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of efficient and effective cloud security operations, as mandated by frameworks like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the ISO 27001 standard, which emphasize proactive threat detection, rapid response, and continuous improvement. By automating alert triage, enrichment, and initial response actions, the team can focus on more complex threats, thereby improving mean time to detect (MTTD) and mean time to respond (MTTR). This also supports compliance with regulations that require timely incident notification and remediation. An incorrect approach of simply increasing the SIEM alert thresholds to reduce the volume is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates the principle of comprehensive security monitoring and could lead to the overlooking of critical security events, increasing the risk of undetected breaches. Ethically and regulatorily, this is a failure to implement adequate controls and could result in significant penalties under data protection laws like GDPR or CCPA, which mandate the protection of personal data from unauthorized access or disclosure. Another incorrect approach of manually investigating every single alert, even low-fidelity ones, is also professionally unsound. It demonstrates a commitment to thoroughness. It is an inefficient use of skilled security personnel's time. This leads to alert fatigue, burnout, and a reduced capacity to address high-priority incidents, ultimately degrading the overall security posture and increasing the likelihood of missing a genuine threat. This approach fails to leverage technological advancements for operational efficiency, a key tenet of modern cybersecurity management. A further incorrect approach of disabling certain types of alerts deemed noisy without a thorough risk assessment is equally problematic. This is a reactive measure that prioritizes immediate operational comfort over long-term security. It creates blind spots in the security monitoring capabilities, leaving the organization vulnerable to attacks that exploit the disabled alert categories. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to risk management best practices, potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance if a breach occurs due to these blind spots. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the current operational challenges, an evaluation of available technological solutions, and a risk-based approach to implementing changes. This includes understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization, prioritizing threats based on their potential impact, and continuously evaluating the effectiveness of implemented controls. Professionals should leverage automation and orchestration tools where appropriate to enhance efficiency without compromising security, and always maintain a comprehensive view of the threat landscape. Question 17. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a cloud service provider's security posture requires a thorough audit. The audit team is considering several methodologies to assess the security of the provider's infrastructure and services. Which of the following approaches would best satisfy the comprehensive requirements of a cloud security audit, ensuring both technical robustness and compliance with industry best practices and regulatory frameworks relevant to cloud security? Option A. Conducting in-depth manual log analysis for all security events, supplemented by periodic manual code reviews of the provider's applications. Option B. Employing automated vulnerability scanning tools for all assessments, followed by a review of publicly available compliance certifications. Option C. Utilizing a combination of automated configuration scanning, targeted vulnerability scanning, manual penetration testing, continuous security monitoring, and in-depth log analysis, alongside a review of operational procedures and compliance documentation. Option D. Focusing primarily on penetration testing to identify exploitable vulnerabilities, with minimal emphasis on configuration checks or ongoing monitoring. The correct answer is B. Employing automated vulnerability scanning tools for all assessments, followed by a review of publicly available compliance certifications. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security auditing, balancing the need for comprehensive security assessments with the operational realities and potential impact on a live production environment. The organization is undergoing a critical cloud security audit, and the audit team has proposed distinct methodologies for assessing different aspects of their cloud infrastructure. The challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate and effective methodologies that align with regulatory requirements and best practices for cloud security, while minimizing disruption and ensuring the integrity of the audit findings. The CCSP framework emphasizes a risk-based approach to security, and the chosen methodologies must reflect this by prioritizing areas of highest risk and impact. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a layered methodology that leverages both automated tools and manual techniques, tailored to the specific assessment objectives. For configuration audits, automated scanning tools are highly effective in identifying deviations from established security baselines and compliance standards, such as CIS benchmarks or NIST guidelines, which are foundational for CCSP. For vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, a combination of automated tools to identify known vulnerabilities and manual testing to uncover complex or logic-based flaws is crucial. Security monitoring and log analysis are best addressed through continuous monitoring solutions and in-depth log review to detect suspicious activities and policy violations. Finally, security auditing techniques should encompass both technical assessments and procedural reviews to ensure that security controls are not only implemented, but also operating effectively and in accordance with organizational policies and regulatory mandates. This comprehensive approach ensures that all critical aspects of cloud security are evaluated, providing a holistic view of the organization's security posture and compliance status, aligning with CCSP Domain 4 Cloud Security Operations and Domain 5 Cloud Security Architecture, Design and Risk Management. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that relies solely on automated vulnerability scanning without manual validation or penetration testing is insufficient. This fails to identify zero-day vulnerabilities, business logic flaws, or misconfigurations that automated tools might miss, leading to an incomplete risk assessment and potential regulatory noncompliance. It also neglects the procedural and operational aspects of security, which are vital for a thorough audit. An approach that focuses exclusively on penetration testing without a foundational security configuration audit or log analysis is also flawed. While penetration testing identifies exploitable weaknesses, it doesn't address the underlying security posture or detect ongoing malicious activity. Without reviewing configurations and logs, the audit team cannot confirm adherence to security policies or identify subtle indicators of compromise, which are critical for demonstrating due diligence and meeting compliance requirements. An approach that prioritizes manual log analysis over automated configuration scanning and vulnerability assessments would be inefficient and prone to human error. While manual analysis can uncover nuanced issues, it is time-consuming and may not cover the breadth of potential vulnerabilities or misconfigurations present in a cloud environment. This could lead to missed critical findings and a failure to meet the comprehensive audit requirements expected under CCSP. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, multifaceted approach to cloud security assessments and audits. This involves understanding the organization's specific cloud environment, its threat landscape, and applicable regulatory requirements. The decision-making process should prioritize methodologies that provide the most comprehensive and accurate view of security posture, while also considering operational impact and resource constraints. A structured audit plan developed in collaboration with stakeholders is essential. This plan should clearly define the scope, objectives, methodologies, and reporting requirements, ensuring that the audit is both effective and efficient. Continuous evaluation and adaptation of assessment techniques are also key, given the dynamic nature of cloud security. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that a financial services firm, subject to strict data privacy regulations and handling highly sensitive customer financial information, is planning to migrate a critical legacy application to the cloud. The firm's primary objectives are to improve application performance, reduce operational costs, and ensure continuous compliance with data protection laws. IT security team is tasked with recommending the most suitable cloud architecture. Which of the following cloud architecture approaches best aligns with the firm's objectives and regulatory obligations? Option A. Adopting a hybrid cloud strategy, hosting the application's core processing logic on a public cloud PaaS, and storing sensitive customer data in an on-premises data center, with secure connectivity between the two environments. Option B. Deploying the application on a public cloud infrastructure as a service (IaaS) platform, leveraging the provider's standard security features, and assuming full responsibility for securing the operating system and application layers. Option C. Implementing the application on a community cloud, designed for financial institutions, with shared security responsibilities and a focus on cost-effectiveness for interorganizational data sharing. Option D. Migrating the application to a private cloud deployment model, utilizing a platform as a service PaaS offering that provides managed security controls for the application, runtime, and database, while the firm retains control over network security and data governance. Correct answer is B. Deploying the application on a public cloud infrastructure as a service (IaaS) platform, leveraging the provider's standard security features, and assuming full responsibility for securing the operating system and application layers. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, where an organization is migrating a legacy, monolithic application to a cloud environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for rapid deployment and cost savings with the need to maintain robust security and compliance, especially when dealing with sensitive data. The organization must choose a cloud service model and deployment model that aligns with its security posture, regulatory obligations, and technical capabilities. The CCSP professional must analyze the trade-offs between different cloud models and their implications for data protection, access control, and operational management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves selecting a cloud deployment model that offers the highest degree of control over the underlying infrastructure and security, while also considering the organization's specific compliance requirements. For an organization handling sensitive data and subject to stringent regulations, a private cloud or a hybrid cloud with a significant private component is often the most appropriate. This allows for greater customization of security controls, dedicated resources, and a clearer demarcation of responsibilities, which is crucial for meeting compliance mandates. The chosen service model, e.g., IaaS for maximum control or PaaS for managed services with specific security configurations, must also be carefully evaluated in conjunction with the deployment model to ensure that all security and compliance requirements are met. This approach prioritizes security and compliance by maintaining a higher level of control over critical components, aligning with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. Incorrect approaches analysis. Choosing a public cloud deployment model without a thorough assessment of data sensitivity and regulatory requirements is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Public clouds, while offering scalability and cost-effectiveness, may not provide the granular control necessary to meet specific compliance obligations for sensitive data, potentially leading to data breaches and noncompliance penalties. Furthermore, relying solely on the cloud service providers, CSP, security controls without understanding the shared responsibility model can lead to security gaps. Opting for a SaaS model without scrutinizing the vendor's security certifications and data handling practices for sensitive information is also problematic. This bypasses the organization's ability to implement its own security policies and controls, creating a compliance risk. Similarly, adopting a hybrid cloud without clearly defining which data resides in which environment and ensuring appropriate security controls for each can lead to unintended data exposure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach cloud migration by first conducting a comprehensive risk assessment and understanding all applicable regulatory and compliance requirements. This involves identifying the sensitivity of the data to be migrated and the specific legal and industry mandates that govern its handling. Next, they should evaluate the different cloud service and deployment models, considering the level of control, security features, and shared responsibility models offered by each. The decision should be driven by the principle of security by design and compliance by design, ensuring that the chosen architecture inherently supports the organization's security and regulatory posture. A phased migration approach, starting with less sensitive data or workloads, can also be beneficial to validate security controls and operational procedures before migrating critical assets. Continuous monitoring and auditing are essential to maintain compliance and security throughout the cloud lifecycle. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that a cloud security team is struggling to effectively contain potential lateral movement of threats within their virtual private cloud, VPC, despite having a perimeter firewall in place. The team is considering several approaches to enhance their network security posture and prevent the spread of compromised workloads. Which of the following strategies offers the most robust and compliant solution for granular network security within the cloud environment? Option A. Continuing to rely on the existing perimeter firewall at the edge of the VPC as the primary security control. Option B. Implementing microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, to define security policies at the workload level. Option C. Deploying host-based firewalls on every virtual machine and relying on their individual configurations for network protection. Option D. Establishing network segmentation solely at the subnet level, creating distinct subnets for different application tiers. The correct answer is B. Implementing microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, to define security policies at the workload level. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for granular network control with operational efficiency and the dynamic nature of cloud environments. The professional must navigate the complexities of virtual network security, firewall management, and the implementation of advanced segmentation techniques to protect sensitive data and applications from evolving threats. The challenge lies in selecting the most effective and compliant strategy that aligns with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations, without introducing new vulnerabilities or hindering legitimate business operations. The rapid pace of cloud adoption and the sophistication of cyber attacks necessitate a proactive and well-informed approach to network security. Correct approach analysis. Implementing microsegmentation using cloud-native security groups and network access control lists, NACL, represents best professional practice. This approach allows for the creation of granular security perimeters around individual workloads or application tiers, significantly reducing the attack surface and limiting lateral movement of threats within the cloud environment. Cloud-native services are designed to integrate seamlessly with the underlying infrastructure, offering dynamic policy enforcement that adapts to changes in the environment. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to robust cloud security architectures. From a regulatory perspective, this granular control aids in demonstrating compliance with data protection mandates that require strict access controls and isolation of sensitive data, such as those found in U.S. federal regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS when applicable to cloud deployments. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on a perimeter firewall at the edge of the virtual private cloud, VPC, is an insufficient strategy. This approach fails to address internal threats or compromised workloads that could then move freely within the network. It represents a failure to implement defense in depth and can lead to regulatory noncompliance with standards requiring internal segmentation and access control. Deploying host-based firewalls on every virtual machine without a coordinated network segmentation strategy is also problematic. While host-based firewalls provide endpoint protection, managing them at scale across a dynamic cloud environment is operationally burdensome and prone to configuration drift. It does not effectively prevent lateral movement between compromised hosts if network-level controls are absent, potentially violating security requirements for network isolation. Implementing network segmentation only at the subnet level without further granular controls is a partial solution. While better than a single perimeter, it still allows for significant lateral movement within a subnet, which may contain workloads with varying security requirements. This lack of fine-grained control can lead to compliance gaps if sensitive data resides within a segment that also hosts less secure applications. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing the protection of critical assets and sensitive data. This involves understanding the organization's threat model and regulatory landscape. The decision-making process should involve evaluating the effectiveness of different security controls against identified risks, considering operational overhead, and ensuring alignment with cloud provider best practices and relevant compliance frameworks. A layered security strategy, incorporating both network-level and host-level controls, with a strong emphasis on granular segmentation, is crucial for building a resilient cloud security posture. Continuous monitoring and automated policy enforcement are key to maintaining security in dynamic cloud environments. Question 20. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of access requests to sensitive cloud resources that, while technically permitted by existing role-based access control, RBAC policies, are flagged as anomalous due to the context of the user and the time of access. This suggests that the current RBAC implementation, while functional, may not be sufficiently granular or context-aware to prevent potential misuse or unauthorized access in a dynamic cloud environment. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while adhering to cloud security, best practices, and regulatory expectations for access governance? Option A. Increase the number of highly specific RBAC roles to further segment permissions, creating more granular roles for each distinct task. Option B. Ignore the alert, assuming it is a false positive due to the technical compliance with existing RBAC policies. Option C. Implement attribute-based access control (ABAC) to dynamically evaluate access requests based on user, resource, and environmental attributes, supplementing or replacing existing RBAC policies where appropriate. Option D. Broadly grant elevated privileges to a larger group of users who frequently access these resources to streamline operations and reduce access-related friction. The correct answer is C. Implement attribute-based access control (ABAC) to dynamically evaluate access requests based on user, resource, and environmental attributes, supplementing or replacing existing RBAC policies where appropriate. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the need for granular access control with the operational overhead of managing complex authorization policies. The monitoring system's alert highlights a potential misconfiguration or a gap in the current access control strategy, specifically concerning the effectiveness of role-based access control, RBAC, in a dynamic cloud environment. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the alert and implementing a solution that is both secure and operationally feasible, while adhering to the principles of least privilege and compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing RBAC implementation, focusing on the defined roles, their assigned permissions, and the users/groups assigned to those roles. This includes verifying that roles are not overly permissive and that user assignments are appropriate for their job functions. The next critical step is to evaluate the feasibility of transitioning to or augmenting RBAC with attribute-based access control, ABAC. ABAC offers more dynamic and context-aware authorization by considering attributes of the user, the resource, and the environment, which can address the limitations of static RBAC in complex or rapidly changing cloud deployments. This approach aligns with best practices for cloud IAM, emphasizing granular control and adaptability, and supports compliance with regulations that mandate strong access controls and data protection, by ensuring that access is granted based on a comprehensive understanding of context, not just static role assignments. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to simply increase the number of highly specific RBAC roles without a clear strategy for their management. This can lead to role explosion, making the system difficult to administer, audit, and maintain, ultimately increasing the risk of misconfiguration and security gaps. This fails to address the underlying issue of RBAC limitations in dynamic environments and can create an unsustainable management burden, potentially violating principles of efficient security operations. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the alert, assuming it is a false positive or a minor issue. This is a critical failure in professional responsibility and security hygiene. Ignoring alerts directly contravenes the principle of proactive security monitoring and incident response. It leaves the organization vulnerable to potential breaches, unauthorized access, and data exfiltration, which would have significant regulatory and ethical implications, including potential fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach is to broadly grant elevated privileges to a larger group of users to resolve the alert, citing operational expediency. This directly violates the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure access management. Granting excessive permissions increases the attack surface and the potential impact of a compromised account. This approach is ethically unsound and would likely violate numerous regulatory requirements mandating strict access controls and data segregation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such alerts by first understanding the specific context of the alert within the cloud environment. This involves detailed investigation of the event that triggered the monitoring system. The next step is to assess the current IAM strategy against established security frameworks and regulatory requirements relevant to the organization's jurisdiction. This assessment should identify any discrepancies or weaknesses, such as the limitations of RBAC in dynamic scenarios. The decision-making process should then prioritize solutions that enhance security posture, adhere to the principle of least privilege, and are operationally sustainable. This often involves a phased approach, starting with optimizing existing RBAC configurations and then exploring more advanced models like ABAC where appropriate, ensuring that any changes are thoroughly tested and documented. Continuous monitoring and regular access reviews are essential components of this process to maintain an effective IAM posture.